Behind those numbers lie even more troubling details.
Check this out. This is from CNN, and Fareed Zakaria, who for some reason is liked by a lot of, say, centrist people. He's one of these people that's been on air for years, gets almost everything wrong. But here he is begrudgingly laying out some really, really bad news for the Democrats. I mean, in essence, he is a Democrat on CNN, now going, oh, Democrats, we got a problem on our hands.
Here's my take. When President Biden made clear he was going to run for re-election, I had a sense of what his election strategy was and thought it was an intelligent path to victory. After the chaos of COVID and Trump, Joe Biden would stand for normalcy and a rising tide of good economic news. Donald Trump would divide Republicans, with significant chunks of the party wishing that someone like Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis would be their nominee. Meanwhile, Trump would unite and motivate Democrats, allowing President Biden to focus on the votes of independents and swing states who threw the Electoral College to Trump in 2016 and to Biden in 2020. I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would. Trump is now leading in almost all the swing states, but behind those numbers lie even more troubling details. As someone worried about the prospects of a second Trump term, I think it's best to be honest about reality. I understand that polls are not always accurate, but in general, they have tended to underestimate Donald Trump's support, not overestimate it. I doubt that there are many shy Biden voters in the country. The shift here is stark. On the question of who voters trust more to deal with the economy, Trump has a 22-point lead over Biden, according to an NBC poll from January. This marks a 15-point bump for Trump compared to the same poll in 2020.
Okay, so the reason I want to show you that is because here's a guy, he's basically saying, I'm worried about this. This isn't what I expected. This isn't what I want. He's telling you, I'm a Democrat activist who pretends to be a journalist on CNN every week, and I'm worried about what I see. Things are not going the way I predicted. And it's because, of course, of all of the things that we talk about on the show all the time, whether it's the economy or it's the border or it's now what people are seeing is wrong with Joe Biden's brain. Here's a little bit more from Fareed on the bad news for the Democrats.
On the other great cultural issue, immigration, Biden is 35 points behind Trump as to who would handle it better. And I do wonder whether abortion will be as large an issue in a presidential race, given that reversing Roe v. Wade threw the issue to state governments and legislatures and not the federal government. Perhaps the most worrying new trend for the Democrats is that far from being the more unified party, they are now bitterly divided over the war in Gaza. Bernie Sanders has said the eruption of pro-Palestinian protests could be Biden's Vietnam. Meanwhile, Republicans seem to be uniting behind Trump. Whatever opposition he faced in the primaries has largely melted away. And the trials against him keep him in the spotlight, infuriate his base, who sees him as a martyr, and even may serve to make him the object of some sympathy among people in general who believe that his prosecutors are politically motivated. This happens to be true, in my opinion. I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump. A majority of Americans are skeptical that Trump will be able to get a fair trial, according to a CNN poll. And I haven't even mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West and Jill Stein, all of whom would probably take votes away from Biden. The one that troubles me the most is on the question of who was the more competent. Joe Biden led Donald Trump by 9 points in 2020. But Trump now leads by 16 points in January 2024. That 25-point shift could be a reflection of people's sense that the president's age is affecting his capacity to govern. And there's very little that Joe Biden can do now to change that perception.
I have to say, as a quick sidebar, I don't know how people watch shows like that where it's just a host, like I'm hosting this show and I'm telling you what I think and it's coming out of my brain and I have some information in front of me. But a show like that where he's so obviously just reading, it's just a prepackaged thing that they could have just emailed to you and he's just reading it. But that aside for just a second, I mean, that just shows you the disconnect between cable news and what's happening online. But that aside for a second, He's telling you, this is not what I want, guys. Like he's late. It's almost like his brain is like coming online as he's talking. He's like, boy, they are really going after Trump unfairly, and that is lighting a fire under the thing. And people do realize that Joe Biden's not competent. And my God, people do think that Trump will be better on the border and all of these things.